The alarm clock didn't buzz. It rattled, a harsh mechanical cough that signaled the start of another battle. Mark Sullivan hit the button with a calloused hand, the skin rough like sandpaper, stained permanently with the ghost of drywall dust and engine grease. 5:30 a.m. Outside the window of the small second-floor apartment, the sky was the color of a bruised plum, hovering somewhere between night and the reluctant gray of dawn. Mark sat up, the mattress springs groaning in protest. He took a moment, just 10 seconds, to let the vertigo of exhaustion pass. His lower back seized up, a sharp reminder of the 12 hours he'd spent hauling lumber yesterday, and his knees popped as he swung his legs over the side of the bed. He walked to the small bedroom across the hall. The door was ajar. Inside, amidst a sea of pink blankets and stuffed animals, lay Lily, 6 years old. She was sleeping with her mouth slightly open, one arm thrown dramatically over her head. Mark leaned against the doorframe, watching her. This was his fuel. This was the reason he ate cheap processed food so she could have fresh fruit. This was the reason he wore boots with holes in the soles so she could have new sneakers for gym class. Daddy, a sleepy mumble. Go back to sleep, Bug, Mark whispered, his voice raspy. Daddy's just making coffee. He retreated to the kitchen. The linoleum was peeling in the corner, and the refrigerator hummed with a sound like a dying airplane. On the counter lay a stack of bills, held down by a wrench he'd forgotten to put back in his toolbox. Rent, overdue. Electricity, final notice. Dental bill, Lily $450. Mark stared at the dental bill. Lily needed a cavity filled and a spacer. He had $84 in his checking account until the job on Friday paid out. If the contractor didn't stiff him again. He made instant coffee, skipping the sugar because they were out. He drank it black, staring at his reflection in the dark window. He saw a man of 32 who looked 45. Dark circles under his eyes, a beard he kept trimmed to hide the gauntness of his cheeks, and shoulders that were broad but slumped under an invisible weight. He was a single father in a city that didn't forgive poverty. In the dating market, he was invisible, a man with baggage and no bank account. To society, he was just another guy in a dirty flannel shirt, probably uneducated, probably rough. But Mark had a code. It was a simple code, passed down from a father who died broke but beloved. Work hard. Protect the weak. Keep your head up. Today, that code would be tested in a way he never expected. 3 miles away, in a basement apartment that smelled of damp concrete and determination, Chloe Bennett was trying to get out of bed. It didn't go well. Oh God, she hissed, clutching her sheets. Every fiber of her lower body screamed. Her quadriceps felt like they had been shredded with a cheese grater. Her hamstrings were tight steel cables that refused to stretch. But the worst pain was in her inner thighs, the adductors. Chloe was 21, a student by day, a waitress by morning, and an aspiring firefighter by night. The physical entrance exam for the fire academy was 3 weeks away. She was small, and the instructors had told her she lacked the lower body torque to drag a 200-pound dummy out of a burning building. So Chloe had decided to prove them wrong. Last night, she had gone to the 24-hour gym and done the gauntlet. Squats, lunges, leg press, and then the adductor machine, the one that targets the inner thighs. She had pushed until her vision blurred, fueled by the desperate need to secure a career that would get her mother out of debt. Now, at 6 a.m., she was paying the price. She rolled out of bed and hit the floor. Her legs buckled instantly. Come on, Chloe, she whispered to herself, grabbing the nightstand for support. Mind over matter. She had a shift at the Silver Skillet starting at 7 a.m. It was the morning rush. If she called in sick, she'd lose the tips she needed for her tuition deposit. She managed to stand, but her gait was terrifying. She walked like a marionette with tangled strings. To keep her balance, she had to keep her stance wide, waddling slightly. Bringing her legs together caused a shooting pain that made her see white spots. She showered, the hot water offering only a momentary mercy. She pulled on her uniform, black slacks, a white button-down shirt that was slightly too big, and a black apron. She tied her blonde hair back into a severe ponytail, trying to pull her face into a semblance of alertness. She looked in the mirror. Dark circles, rival marks. Her skin was pale. You can do this, she told her reflection. Juste pour coffee. Carry plates. Don't fall down. She didn't know that today, The simple act of not falling down would become the hardest thing she'd ever done. The silver skillet was a relic. It sat on the corner of 5th and Main, trapped between a shiny new tech startup office and a decaying gas station. It was the demilitarized zone of the city. Here, construction workers in neon vests sat 2 booths away from hedge fund managers in Italian suits. Mark dropped Lily off at school at 7:45 a.m. She kissed his cheek, oblivious to his stress. "Love you, Daddy. Don't forget, tomorrow is show and tell." "I remember, Buck." "Love you." He watched her run into the schoolyard, then drove his battered 2015 Ford truck to the diner. He had an hour before his drywall gig started. He needed food, and he needed a moment of silence. He took his usual spot, the corner booth near the window. The vinyl seat was cracked, repaired with silver duct tape that caught on your jeans if you weren't careful. It smelled of bacon grease, bleach, and old coffee. To Mark, it smelled like sanctuary. He sat down, his heavy work boots thudding against the floor. He placed his phone on the table, screen cracked, and checked his bank balance again. Still $84. "Coffee, hon." Mark looked up. It wasn't the usual waitress, a kindly older woman named Martha. It was a new girl. Chloe approached the table. She was moving with agonizing slowness. She gripped the coffee pot with white-knuckled intensity. Mark, observant by nature and trade, noticed immediately. He saw the micro-tremors in her thighs. He saw the way she shifted her weight, keeping her feet planted wide, bracing herself against the table edge. "Yeah, Black. 2 eggs, over easy. Wheat toast. Bacon," Mark said softly. "Coming right up," Chloe said. Her voice was tight. She poured the coffee. Her hand shook, and a few drops splashed onto the saucer. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, reaching for a napkin. "It's fine," Mark said, catching her eye. "Don't worry about it." He saw the pain in her eyes. It was a look he knew well. It was the bone-tired look. The look of someone working through an injury, because the alternative was starvation. "Rough start?" he asked gently. Chloe forced a smile. It didn't reach her eyes. "Just a long gym session last night. Regretting it today." Mark nodded. "Leg day." "Leg day," she confirmed, a ghost of a genuine smile appearing. "The worst." She turned to leave, and Mark watched her go. Her walk was stiff, almost robotic. She looked like she was walking on broken glass. She's tough, Mark thought. Most people would have called in. He sipped his coffee, unaware that the atmosphere in the diner was about to shift from mundane to malicious. The diner began to fill up. The noise level rose, the clatter of silverware, the hiss of the espresso machine, the drone of conversation. 3 men in expensive gray suits sat at a large circular booth in the center of the room. They were the power lunch crowd, here for a power breakfast. They projected an aura of ownership. They spoke loudly, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, checking their watches, and snapping their fingers for service. Their leader was a man named Brad, slicked back hair, a watch that cost more than Mark's truck, and a face that had never known a day of manual labor. Chloe was assigned to their table. Mark watched over the rim of his mug. He saw Brad look Chloe up and down as she approached. It wasn't a look of appreciation. It was a look of assessment, like one would look at a piece of livestock. "Coffee," Brad commanded, not looking at her face. "And make it fresh. This pot looks like it's been sitting since the Carter administration." "I'll brew a fresh pot, sir," Chloe said. She turned to walk away. Because her legs were so stiff, her turn was awkward. She had to pivot her whole body. As she did, she stumbled slightly on a loose floor tile. She caught herself, but it was ungraceful. Brad snickered. He nudged his colleague. "Check out the walk. A bit wide, isn't it?" His colleague, a younger man with a red tie, laughed. "Rough night, maybe?" The insinuation hung in the air, greasy and vile. Mark's jaw tightened. He gripped his fork. Ignore it, he told himself. Not your business. You can't afford trouble. Chloe returned with the fresh coffee and a heavy tray of pancakes for another table. She was sweating now. The adrenaline of the rush was wearing off, leaving only the raw, throbbing inflammation of her muscles. She served the pancakes to an elderly couple, then moved back to the center station to grab silverware for the suits. Disaster struck. As she turned from the station, her adductor muscle seized, a violent cramping spasm that felt like a knife being twisted in her inner thigh. Her knees buckled. She gasped, her body instinctively trying to protect the injury. She grabbed the edge of a counter to stop from falling, but her other hand flailed. A metal container of spoons was knocked over. Clank crash. 50 stainless steel spoons hit the tile floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the crowded room. The diner went dead silent. Chloe froze. She was bent over, clutching the counter. Her legs splayed wide in an awkward squat because her muscles physically refused to bring her knees together without excruciating pain. She stared at the spoons. The shame hit her harder than the pain. "Oh no," she whispered. She tried to squat down to pick them up. But as she lowered her hips, the pain in her groin was blinding. She physically couldn't do it. She couldn't close her legs to kneel properly. I can't," she stammered, panic rising in her chest. The manager, a thin man with a permanent scowl named Mr. Henderson, marched out from the back office. "What is going on here?" Chloe looked up, her face bright red, tears welling in her eyes. The pain was overwhelming her filter. She needed to explain why she was standing in this grotesque, wide-legged posture. "I'm sorry," she cried out, her voice cracking. "I'm trying, but I can't close my legs. It hurts." The words hung in the air. "I can't close my legs. It hurts." To an athlete, to a gym goer, to a doctor, this meant one thing: extreme muscle soreness. Delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS, of the highest order. But to Brad in the table of suits, it meant something else entirely. For 2 seconds, there was silence. Then Brad let out a bark of laughter. It was loud, sharp, and derisive. "Whoa," Brad shouted, looking around the room to make sure he had an audience. "TMI, sweetheart. TMI. The man in the red tie joined in. "Rough night, huh? Must have been quite the party. She can't close her legs," the third man wheezed, slapping the table. "I bet she can't. That's what happens when you're popular, right?" The laughter spread. It wasn't everyone. The elderly couple looked horrified, but it was enough. A guy in a baseball cap at the counter smirked. 2 women in the corner giggled behind their hands, whispering. Chloe stood there, paralyzed. The realization of what she had said and how it had been interpreted washed over her like ice water. She wasn't just in pain. She was being painted as loose, unprofessional, a joke. "That's not. I didn't mean." Chloe stammered, but her voice was drowned out by the snickering. Mr. Henderson, the manager, didn't defend her. He looked embarrassed. He looked at the wealthy customers laughing and decided his loyalty lay with the money. "Chloe, pull yourself together," he hissed. "Pick up this mess. You're making a scene. If you're indisposed due to your personal activities, you should have stayed home." He believed it, too. He thought she was hungover or suffering the after-effects of a wild hookup. Chloe dropped to her knees, sobbing. She forced her legs together despite the screaming agony, scrabbling at the spoons on the dirty floor. Her ponytail had come loose. She looked small, defeated, and utterly alone. "Hey, honey," Brad called out, leaning over the back of his booth. "Maybe put some ice on that. Or just keep him open. Seems like that's your natural state." The table erupted again. Mark Sullivan had heard enough. Mark slowly placed his fork down on his plate. The metal clicked against the ceramic. He felt a burning in his chest that had nothing to do with heartburn. It was the memory of humiliation. He remembered standing in line at the grocery store 3 years ago. His credit card declined for a gallon of milk. People sighing behind him, looking at his dirty boots, judging him as a failure of a father. He knew what it felt like to be trying your hardest and still be the punchline of a rich man's joke. He looked at Chloe, a kid really, trying to build a future, working through pain, and being destroyed by men who had never calloused their hands in their lives. Not today, Mark thought. Not while I'm breathing. Mark stood up. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered from years of lifting drywall and framing houses. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a bear that had just been poked. The sound of his heavy work boots on the tile floor was rhythmic and heavy. Thud, thud, thud. He walked past the counter. He walked past the manager. He walked straight to the center of the room, stopping directly between Chloe, who was still on the floor, and Brad's table. The shadow he cast fell over the table of suits. Brad looked up, annoyed. "Can I help you, pal? We're eating here." Mark didn't look at Brad. He looked down at Chloe. He crouched down, his knees popping audibly. He ignored the manager. He reached out a hand. It was rough, scarred, and gentle. "Leave the spoons," Mark said softly. Chloe looked up, tears streaming down her face, mascara smudged. She saw a man in a flannel shirt looking at her with zero judgment, only fierce protectiveness. "I have to." She sniffled. "No, you don't," Mark said. He stood up, offering her his hand. "Oh, take your time." She gripped his hand. He pulled her up effortlessly, stabilizing her when her legs wobbled. He kept a hand on her shoulder, a steady weight. Then Mark turned to face the room. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He spoke in the voice he used when a new guy on the construction site was doing something dangerous, low, resonant, and leaving no room for argument. "Does this look funny to you?" Mark asked. He looked directly at Brad. "Excuse me?" Brad scoffed, trying to regain his dominance. "We're just having a laugh." "She's the one who said—" "I know what she said," Mark interrupted. The calm in his voice was terrifying. "She said her muscles are locked up. She said she's in pain." Mark scanned the room, making eye contact with every person who had snickered. The baseball cap guy looked down at his eggs. The gossiping women suddenly found their phones very interesting. "She was in the gym last night," Mark announced, his voice carrying to the back of the kitchen. "I saw her walking in here." "That's a leg day walk." "That is the walk of someone who is pushing their body to the limit to better themselves." He pointed a finger at Brad, a thick, calloused finger. "You sit there in your $1,000 suit, soft hands, laughing at a girl who is working a manual labor job while her muscles are screaming. You think it's a sex joke? That says a lot more about your mind than her morals." The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating. The air conditioner hummed loudly. "She's working," Mark continued, his voice shaking slightly with controlled emotion. "She's serving you your coffee. She's cleaning your table. And she's doing it in agony. And instead of a thank you, or are you okay, you kick her while she's down." Brad's face turned a blotchy red. "Now look here, buddy, you can't talk to me like—" "I'm talking to you," Mark said, stepping closer. "Because I have a daughter. And if my daughter was working her heart out in pain, and some grown men decided to mock her to feel big, I hope someone would stand up for her." Mark turned to Mr. Henderson, the manager. "And you," Mark said, his disappointment palpable. "You're her boss. You're supposed to look out for your team. Instead, you're worried about the spoons." "Mr." Henderson shrank back, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Mark reached into his back pocket. He pulled out his wallet. It was worn leather, fraying at the edges. He took out the 3 $20 bills he had. $60. That was almost all of his cash for the week. It meant skipping lunch for 3 days. It meant risking the gas tank running dry. He didn't hesitate. He slammed the $60 onto the table in front of Brad. "Here," Mark said. "This covers their breakfast. And hers." He turned to Chloe. "Go sit down. You're done carrying trays for 10 minutes. Rest your legs." Chloe was sobbing silently now, but they were different tears. They were tears of relief, of validation. Mark grabbed a napkin from the dispenser. He took a pen from his pocket, a carpenter's pencil, actually, and scrawled something on it. He handed it to Chloe. "If anyone gives you trouble," he said, loud enough for the manager to hear, "my name is Mark. I'm in the book." He looked at the room one last time. "Be better," he said. "All of you." He turned and walked out. He didn't wait for applause. There was none yet. He didn't wait for thanks. He just walked out, head high, his boots echoing in the silence he had created. The silence stretched for 10 seconds after the door closed behind Mark. Then the atmosphere broke. But not into noise, into shame. The elderly woman who had been eating pancakes stood up. She walked over to Chloe, who was leaning against the counter, wiping her eyes. "He's right, dear," the woman said softly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a $50 bill. She tucked it into Chloe's apron. "For your tuition. Or massage. You're doing a good job." The ripple started. The man in the baseball cap stood up, looking ashamed. He walked to the register, paid his bill, and left a $20 tip on a $5 coffee. He mumbled, "Sorry," as he passed Chloe. At the center table, Brad and his colleagues were frozen. They were the villains of the story, and they knew it. Everyone was looking at them with disgust. "Let's go," Brad muttered. He threw money on the table, way more than the bill, and they practically ran out of the diner, heads ducked. Mr. Henderson, the manager, looked at the pile of cash Mark had left, then at the cash Brad had left. He looked at Chloe, who was standing taller now despite the pain. "Take a break, Chloe," Henderson mumbled, finally finding a shred of decency. "Sit in the back. I'll cover your tables for 20 minutes. Chloe nodded. She limped to the back, clutching the napkin Mark had given her. It didn't have a phone number. It just said Rome wasn't built in a day. Neither are legs. Keep grinding, Mark. The story could have ended there. A moral victory, a warm feeling. But the universe occasionally balances the scales. In the corner of the diner, in a booth obscured by a large potted plant, a woman had been watching. Her name was Eleanor Vance. She was 70 years old, dressed in a simple wool coat, drinking tea. To the casual observer, she looked like a grandmother waiting for a bus. In reality, Eleanor Vance owned Vance Construction, one of the largest development firms in the state. She was known as the Iron Lady of real estate. She was currently looking for a new site foreman for a massive residential project, but she was tired of the candidates her HR department sent her, college graduates with soft hands and no concept of loyalty or leadership. She had watched the entire scene. She had seen the tired boots. She had heard the speech about the daughter. She had seen the sacrifice of the $60 from a man who clearly couldn't afford it. That, Eleanor thought, sipping her tea, is a leader. She flagged down Mr. Henderson. "The man who just left," Eleanor said sharply. "Do you know him?" He's a regular," Henderson said, nervous around her. "Comes in for eggs. Mark something. Works drywall, I think. Find out," Eleanor commanded. "And that waitress? What's her name?" "Chloe. Tell Chloe to bring me a refill. I want to talk to her." 2 days later, Mark was on a job site, sanding a ceiling. His shoulders burned. Dust coated his beard. He was worrying about the rent again. The $60 he'd given away meant he was eating ramen for dinner, but he didn't regret it. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Hello. Is this Mark Sullivan?" A woman's voice. Crisp, authoritative, but kind. "Speaking. My name is Eleanor Vance. I was having breakfast at the Silver Skillet on Tuesday. I believe you made quite an impression on the room." Mark paused, his stomach dropping. "Look, if I caused trouble, I'm sorry I just—" "You didn't cause trouble, Mr. Sullivan. You corrected it. I'm the owner of Vance Construction. I need a site manager for the new Riverside project. The job pays $85,000 a year, plus full benefits and dental for dependents." Mark nearly dropped his sander. I don't have a degree, ma'am. I don't care about degrees. I care about character. And I care about people who know the value of hard work and respect. I saw what you did for that girl. That's the kind of man I want running my crews." There was a silence on the line. Mark looked around the dusty, half-finished room. He thought of Lily's dental bill. He thought of the hole in his boots. "When can I start?" he choked out. "Monday." "Oh, and Mark." "Yes, ma'am. Bring the truck. We'll get you a company vehicle, but I like a truck that shows a man works." 6 months later. The Silver Skillet was bustling. The air smelled of coffee and bacon. The door chimed. A man walked in. He was wearing clean work boots, decent jeans, and a jacket that wasn't frayed. He looked healthy rested. The dark circles were gone. Mark Sullivan sat in his usual booth. "Coffee." Mark looked up. Chloe was there. But she looked different, too. She was standing straight. Her shoulders were broad, her posture confident. She wasn't wearing the apron. She was wearing a gray T-shirt with Fire Academy printed on it. "Chloe." Mark smiled. "Mark." She beamed. She slid into the booth opposite him, not as a waitress, but as a friend. "I heard you quit," Mark said. "I did," she said proudly. "I passed the physical. Top 10% of the class. My legs, they work pretty good now." She laughed. "I start the academy next week. I just came by to say hi to Martha." "That's incredible," Mark said. "I knew you were tough. And I heard about you," Chloe said, nodding at his new jacket. "Site manager." Big shot now. Just lucky, Mark said humbly. Not luck, Chloe corrected him. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Karma. You saved me that day, Mark. I was ready to quit. I was ready to walk out and never come back. You made me feel like I deserved to be there. You did deserve to be there, Mark said. The door opened again. Brad, the man in the suit, walked in. He looked the same, arrogant, rushed. He scanned the room for a table. His eyes landed on the corner booth. He saw Mark. He saw Chloe. He paused. Mark didn't glare. He didn't shout. He just raised his coffee mug in a silent, calm toast. Brad looked at Mark. He looked at the confidence in Mark's eyes, the strength in Chloe's posture. He looked at the way the other customers waved at Mark respectfully. Brad turned around and walked out of the diner. Mark and Chloe watched him go, then looked at each other and laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It was the laugh of two people who had walked through the fire and come out the other side, stronger, happier, and unbroken. So Chloe said, pulling a menu over, "My treat today. I think I can afford it now." Mark smiled, thinking of Lily's new braces and the money in his savings account. "Tell you what," Mark said, "let's split it. Just no leg jokes. Deal." And in the warm, noisy diner, amidst the clatter of plates and the smell of burnt coffee, everything was exactly as it should be.